All right. Well, everyone, welcome to tonight's All Hazards webcast with our guest and really co-host Charlie Hogwood. I'll tell you more about him here in just a second. Tonight, we're talking about water storage and purification because we've heard warnings from NSA and CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Administration or agency, from DHS, from lots of people about the risks of cyber attacks. Apparently, there have been successes by foreign hackers, China, Iran in particular, actually hacking into and disrupting some water and wastewater infrastructure here in the United States. So this is exactly why we're talking about this tonight. And over the weekend, I worked on my own water storage. Brian, yes, this is being recorded. Every webcast we do on this platform is going to be recorded, and everything that Charlie does with All Hazards webcasts and All Hazards programs, it's going to be recorded, and we're going to make a nice video library for everyone so you can go through and watch previous. These are our training webinars, and we're not going to just stop with water storage and purification either. I think the next one we're going to do, I think we decided the next thing is hygiene and sanitation. That's the next thing that's going to kill you. Not having clean water, bad. Not having proper hygiene and sanitation, also very bad. All right, well, everyone, welcome Charlie Hogwood. He's, first of all, he's a good friend of mine, a longtime friend as well. He's an Army veteran. He's currently a firefighter and advanced EMT. And, you know, I was telling him there's really two people in the entire world. If I have a question about preparedness or survival, and Charlie's one of them, he is coming on board to be our really kind of all things preparedness and survival subject matter expert. He is the author of the Survival Group Handbook. So if you have questions about mutual assistance groups, that's another training webinar we're going to get into in the future. I think maybe in the summer or the fall, we'll do that one. And he's also active on wilderness search and rescue and also swiftwater rescue teams in his area. So Charlie, welcome. Glad to have you aboard.
Thanks, Mike. I'm glad to be here. It's always a lot of fun to come online and talk about survival and preparedness.
Well, right on, you know, especially since this is such a timely topic, because we've heard from NSA and from CISA and DHS, and even the Biden administration warned all 50 governors that foreign hackers, probably China or Iran, both of those countries, by the way, have Iran does have a history of hacking into critical infrastructure in the United States multiple times now. And so we've heard warnings about these foreign actors trying to disrupt or exploit wastewater and also wastewater infrastructure in the United States. So this is a very good place to start, because really water, access to clean water, is one of those things. You can live without food, you can be cold, you can be hot. You're not going to live without water for any period of time. So very good place to start. All right, guys, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Charlie, and he has a presentation. We'll go through and kind of do some Q&A. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. And as we go along, if we can answer them right away, we will. If not, we'll have some Q&A. So with that, Charlie, let's go ahead and talk about water storage and purification. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Mike. So when it comes to all of the areas of survival, water is the most critical because we have got to have that to survive. It sounds like something you hear all the time, but since we're made out of so much water, we have to be able to find the water. We have to be able to find water that's drinkable. And if we can't find water that's drinkable, we need to find a way to purify and treat that water so that it's going to be okay for us to consume. So using this, I've done a lot of time researching all of this, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to make sure that you do your research and you look for the types of water that are in your area, get comfortable with the types of filtration that's going to be available to us. I don't want you to call me up and say, Charlie, you gave me dysentery. So with that being said, what are our goals today? Well, we're going to demonstrate how important water is to your survival. We're going to try to remove some of the mystery. We're going to dispel some of the myths that you've got. And maybe we can even correct some of the stuff that you hear on the internet from the e-experts. Because there is a lot of information out there. And any of you that know me know that when I try to do something, I try to simplify it as much as possible. Too many people get out on the internet and try to make things so complicated so they can call it their own way of doing things, that they actually end up doing it in an unsafe, wrong manner. And I don't want that to happen for any of our people. So we're going to simplify things. We're going to make it easy for you. And because when you're trying to do this kind of stuff in a stressful environment, that is going to be key. You're not going to be able to remember all these complicated steps. So we're also going to be able, we're going to try to give you some of that power over the environment that you might find yourself in. Why is water so critical? Well, we've all heard this rule of threes thing, and my take on the rule of threes is by the time you get to 3 of any of these, you're already having a very, very bad day. It's the first 1 and 2 where we need to start addressing the situation, because by the time 3 gets there, it's too late. So 3 hours without shelter and 3 days without water, that varies. It varies on the climate that you're in. If you're sitting in an airboat in the middle of the Florida Everglades on a sunny day, you're basically sitting in a shiny dish that is radiating all of that heat right onto your body. If you're broke down out there with no cover, that 3 days without water is going to turn into about a day, day and a half, because you're going to bake out there. So I don't want you to take these rule of threes as gospel, because it's not. You can live longer than 3 weeks without food. You might live shorter than 3 weeks without food. 3 minutes without air, well, that depends. That depends on what your situation is. That could be a lot shorter than that as well. So what's the big deal about water? Well, only 46% of humans have access to the drinkable water on Earth. That's not very many people when you look at the total number that we have here. And people have been finding water since the dawn of history. We've had to figure it out as humans. So the balance of the people that don't have access to that drinkable water have figured out how to do it. They've figured out where to get it, how to take care of it, how to purify it, and how to protect it. And with that, the bulk of the planet that has no access to clean water is dealing with the waterborne illnesses and the dehydration. Those are major killers of the humans worldwide. Dehydration and hypothermia are going to be the leading causes of outdoor deaths. And if we're in a survival situation, you're going to be hypothermic. You can be hypothermic laying on a 70-degree sidewalk. That's quite possible. If you slept on a sidewalk overnight in warmer weather, but the sidewalk is 70 degrees, it starts to sap your core temperature. If you're out in the wilderness and you go hiking and you spend the night without the proper clothing, like when we do a search and rescue up here on the Appalachian Trail, we find people all the time that go out not prepared for the overnight that they find themselves in. They get lost. They use their phones all day for pictures and Instagram, and when it comes dark and they've lost their way, now they're calling 911 and want help. And one of the first questions we ask them, are you okay? And do you have clothing for the night? And if you're okay and you have clothing for the night, we may very well tell you, and we have told them, that they're going to have to spend the night out there on the trail, and we'll have to come find you in the morning because it's too dark to find you out on a mountain at night. So you may need to learn how to collect water just because you went out on a day hike. You only took one water bottle, and up on the top of a mountain, there's not a whole lot of places to find fresh water. You might find some trickling down a rock, or if you get lucky, you might find a creek or something like that. But can you drink that water? That's a good question. Does that water have any of the Giardia, any of the enteric viruses? Does it have cryptosporidium cysts in it? Quite possibly. Not likely crypto on the side of a mountain because you don't have a lot of cattle up there. Crypto comes from cattle, or it comes from feces. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But waterborne illness does cause diarrhea, and diarrhea causes dehydration. So you start this cycle of misery. Diarrhea is also a major cause of bacteria spread and immune suppression. So why is diarrhea a bacteria spreading situation? Well, because unfortunately, if you're making a mess and you don't have a way to wash your hands, you're spreading that bacteria. And that's one of the ways. If you ask anybody that was on a cruise ship a few years ago, When norovirus came around, one person doesn't wash their hands, and now you've got 900 people with norovirus, and they're all sick. That's a bad situation. Let's look at the earthquakes in Haiti. You had the UN came in to provide assistance to the Haitian people, and I believe it was the Nepalese from Nepal, the soldiers, decided that they were going to urinate out the back of their tent into a creek. It turns out that one of them had cholera. One of them was ill enough, and that the creek was being used by survivors of the devastating earthquakes, and that cholera spread to become an add-on humanitarian disaster to what was already a very, very bad situation. So diarrhea, urinating in the wrong places, and then drinking that wrong water without being able to treat that is a very, very bad situation. So Murphy's Law of Survival is going to tell you that your buddy Bear Grylls didn't survive the crash. And let me add that if you're following anything that Bear Grylls says to do, you're already moving in the wrong direction. He's a TV guy. Do not do the stuff that he does. But what I always say is you're on a trip, you're flying in an aircraft, you crash, your best survivor and well-equipped survivor died in the crash, all your gear burned up. What are you going to do? You need to be able to find the solutions for your survival. And since we're focusing on water, you've got to be able to find the water and make it drinkable. If all of your filtration equipment was burned up in the crash, what are you going to do? This is why I say that you need to know not just how to do things with various equipment, various filters and whatnot, but what do you do if you don't have all of those benefits? So I always say you need to learn the why things work and the how that things work. If you understand why water gets purified, or if you understand how to do it without the fancy equipment, then you're a step ahead of everybody else already. So anything that you learn in the world of survival, I want you to take it another step. There's a thing I come up with called graceful degradation. That's where we have all the great gear, we're all comfortable, everything is great, and then we start losing things. We lose our power. Well, what are we going to do without power? And we start gracefully falling back. We degrade from the advanced society to the more primitive situation. We lose our gear, we lose all the stuff that we have. But if we have the knowledge, we can then back up. We can degrade to the more primitive ways to survive. And that's where you're going to have a leg up on everybody else. So don't count on your gear. Traditionally, it's not going to work when you need it. Think about water filters. And for example, you take your water filter out and it freezes and you got water still in it, like one of the Katadyn's got a paper filter in it. Once those paper filters freeze, they rupture. And you don't know that the filter is bad because it ruptured. So now you're using it and you're confident that the water is going to be good, that you're drinking out of it. Well, then you're probably going to get sick. So this is why you got to know your gear, know how to maintain it and take care of it, or it's not going to work when you need it. So the more knowledge you have, the fewer gadgets you will need. And there's that whole, in the survival industry, there's this whole thing about knowledge versus, stuff versus skills and all that kind of thing. Yes, stuff is great. Skills are great, but it helps to have both of those. So where can we find water? In the wilderness, we can find it in lakes, canals, swamps, ditches, puddles, seawater. Anywhere that water collects, you can find it. Now, the key to this, and I'll probably hit on this again, is choose your water wisely. I would choose clear water that's running in a stream on the side of a mountain before I would choose the water in a runoff ditch alongside of a highway that's going to be filled with oils and chemicals and anything else that blew off the road, because that's going to have all the other stuff in it that I don't want to drink. And we're going to cover what's in there and talk about how hard that is to get out. But when you're in the wilderness, look for water that preferably is moving. That just because it is clear and moving does not mean that it's okay to drink. It doesn't mean that whatsoever. But you can be more confident in that kind of water than you will be with roadside ditches.
Hey, Charlie, I've got
now. Where's the water? And say again.
Sorry. Yeah, I got a quick question here, if I can just
Sure.
interrupt. One of the things we always talk about, especially in the area study, is, and a lot of people talk about this as well, having a PACE plan, primary, alternate, contingency, etc. is this a situation where when you're, you're doing your area study or you're in a survival situation, would it make sense to take 15 minutes before you go try to get that water and just consider water sources around you and do a pace plan, and then prioritize those water sources, like you were saying, choose your water sources, correct? Choose your water sources instead of maybe just going to the nearest water source. There may be a better water source that's 20 minutes away. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're covering an area that I like to, and I agree. In the other stuff that I've written, I encourage the area study, not just the area study around where you live, but also around where you might retreat to. Also, if you're going for a day hike, pick up a map, have a look and see where the water sources are so that you can get familiar with it. Let's say that you found yourself walking a long way for a bug out. Everybody likes to talk about bug outs. You need to have an idea where the water is before you leave, if at all possible. And the reason for that is that you cannot carry enough water to walk many, many miles. You might be walking dozens of miles or hundreds of miles. There's no way that you can carry that for you and whoever you're responsible for, your kids or whoever you're taking along with you. So I always say that find the water and plan your route according to water to water to water, rather than just, I need to go from point A to point B, because there may not be water on that route. And anytime that you have an opportunity along the way to pick up the better water, to choose wisely water, go ahead and do that and top off. That's going to help you an awful lot. So yes, if you're walking down a highway, the ditch water might be the only thing you have. If you've got a filter, like a Berkey bottle, for example, that will filter that kind of stuff out, fantastic. Scoop and move, keep going. But yes, it's absolutely very important to try to get an idea where the water is around you, and understand where the water is based on the time of year. We have dry creeks up here in North Georgia, but rainy season, those dry creeks are no longer dry. So we get a lot of water in those. So if you look at a map and it says there's a creek here and you're like, great, I'm going there, I know there's water there, and you get there and it's a dry creek, well, busted. There's nothing there for you. You're going to have to keep following it or find somewhere else to get your water. So it's a very good point to be familiar with the water around you and where you're going. Does that answer your question, Mike?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. In an urban situation, there's going to be water in all kinds of different places. There's going to be water did you know that you can drink the water in the back of a toilet? If the water is back in the back of a toilet, it's the same water that came out of your sink that you can drink with a cup. If it's been sitting in the toilet for a long time, you got to make a decision. Does that need to be filtered and treated? But it's there. Water heaters hold water. You can open up a water heater down at the bottom where the drain cock is and get the water out of there. If it's a hot water heater and the water is boiling hot, you got to be careful about that so you don't scald. But understand that a lot of those water heaters are 30, 40, 50, 60 gallons of fresh water just sitting there waiting to be used. So don't forget about that. The piping in your home or in a building is going to be full of water. And even if the water is turned off at the city level or wherever it is, you can go to the lowest point on those buildings and you can open up a pipe or a garden hose spigot and you should get water out of there. If you open it up, any of the pipes, and they don't drip right away, that's probably because they're vacuum locked and the water's sitting in there. If you turn it back off and go to the top level or the highest point that you can get to in that piping system and open that will allow some air in, so the piping will drain the water into your container. So be ready to catch it and don't lose it all over the ground after you went to all that work. So canned food, cans of corn and beans and all those have plenty of water in them. They're all stashed with water. So that is a source of hydration there. And rainwater is a maximum benefit. A rooftop on a residential home can, in a 1-inch thunderstorm, in a big storm day, can put out hundreds or even thousands of gallons of water. You could effectively get your entire year of water storage off of one massive rainstorm in the spring or summer. So be prepared to catch that. And we're going to talk about some ways to do that later on. So what's in the water? Well, raw sewage, I'm from South Florida, so we've had a lot of hurricanes. And when the area that I lived in would flood, because I was out in the country a little bit more, all of the septic tanks would be underwater. And since those tanks are underwater, we had the potential of all of that sewage floating back out of those septic tanks and running through all of the water that people were playing in now. So never play in floodwaters because there's going to be all kinds of nasty stuff in there. And the other side of that is if you're counting on your well and your septic tank is flooded and your wellhead was underwater, did the polluted water from either your septic tank or whatever commercial spill happened down the way, the oil sheens and you see on top of there, did that get over towards your well, and did that drain down inside your well and contaminate your well? So you've got to think about that kind of thing too. And a lot of people don't consider that. Surface runoff, when we talk about that, we've put asphalt all over this country, and a lot of stuff drives on that asphalt and a lot of stuff spills on it. Everything from roadkill to gasoline to you name it, chemicals, it's all on that stuff, and it all runs off into those roadside ditches, and that ends up in what we call the stormwater drainage system. And so if you're looking to collect water out of a place where those big concrete pipes go to, like there's a pond or a ditch or something, you're like, great, I see a pond, I can go to fill up my water from there. If you see one of those big concrete pipes that leads into that, that's a stormwater runoff. And if you have another choice, choose the other choice before you use the stormwater runoff area. Chemicals, pesticides, fertilizers. If you're looking for water and you are out near farmland where there's irrigation canals, if you're near, cemeteries, if you're near any area where there's liable to be chemicals, human remains, or anything that would get into the water table, you've got to be careful of that. There's going to be two different ways we're going to talk about for doing things. It's called filter and then treat. You cannot boil chemicals out of your water. It cannot happen. They've got to be filtered out. So if you have a choice of water that may have chemicals in it and may not have chemicals in it, take the one that may not have chemicals in it because it's a little easier to deal with. You might also have VOCs, the chlorinated solvents and fuel components, radiator fluid, things that have a tendency to boil at the same temperature as water, or they evaporate off and they leave some of their chemical signatures behind. That is stuff that if you're going to distill water, that those VOCs will end up back in the water, in the distilled water that you were trying to drink. So be aware of what you are. If you ever pick up water and you want to distill it and it's got radiator fluid in it, don't use that water. Animal waste is going to be a problem depending on where you are. But not only animal waste, the pathogens that you might find like E. coli and Giardia, Cryptosporidium, those cysts and Legionella cholera, all of that stuff, you can find it in creeks. Like I said earlier, with clear running water, it might look like great water to drink, great spring water and all that, fine. But how do you know that there's not a dead cow, up around the corner of that, and it's just sitting there spreading all of that rotting flesh and all of the bacteria right through that clear water? You don't see that. If you're planning on using a creek that goes through your survival retreat area, and you're saying, great, I got a clear running creek going through there. Well, if the bad guys who want to steal all your stuff know you're there and they kick a dead cow or something into the water up there and contaminate your water, that's going to get everybody in your compound sick. So think about it. Just because it's running doesn't mean that it's drinkable. There's enteric viruses, pathogenic viruses, and all that kind of stuff that can live in water. A lot of those you're probably not going to have to worry about, generally speaking. But if you're looking for filter sizes, a 0.1 filter set, 1.1 micron size is generally fine for our purposes. If you're concerned about enteric viruses, norovirus, and things like that, then you're going to have to get a filter that goes down to 0.001 to filter out those viruses. And what you'll find is the tighter the filter, the smaller the micron, the slower the water passes through that. So you're not going to be getting that water out in a hurry. And you'll also find that those filters can clog up faster. So the tighter a filter is, the faster it will clog up with other stuff. And that's why we're going to talk about pre-filtering here in just a little bit, which is very simple. So here we are. We're trying to decide, do we drink the water or do we not drink the water? If you're in a survival situation and there is help that could possibly be coming. They know you're lost. They're looking for you. They might not find you for several days. Depends how far out you are. You can consider, if I don't have a way to prepare that water, if everything else failed and I cannot prepare that water, do I want to drink that water or do I want to dehydrate and hope that help gets here before I die? If the case is that you expect survival help or medical help to reach you in the next few days, next week, I would say drink the bad water, because I would rather be alive and have all kinds of stomach issues than be dead when they find me. So from dehydration. So if you're scheduled to be rescued, and I say scheduled, if you're going to be rescued, go ahead and drink the water, but as a last resort, only as a last resort. The other side of this is, when we get cold, when the cold season comes around, a lot of us don't feel like drinking water. We're like, I'm not thirsty. It's cold out. I'm not sweating. Well, your body still is evaporating like a sponge, and it evaporates quite a bit in the wintertime when the humidity gets all the way down into the 20 and 30% relative humidity. Your body is still evaporating. You're just not sweating. It's evaporating before you sweat. So even if it's cold, you've got to force yourself to drink the proper amount of water every day, or you're going to find yourself dehydrated and it's going to sneak up on you before you realize it. So in order to understand what waterborne illness is, you have to start to understand what are some of the symptoms that we might find in it. So if you drank some bad water, how do you know later on? Maybe you use that filter that had a bad filter and it was ruptured. And you're like, well, all of a sudden I got nausea, cramps, diarrhea, I've got some headaches. I really don't feel good at all. You can start to think, well, what would have caused that? What did I do different? Is everybody else in my group experiencing the same symptoms? So that could be from drinking bad water, or it could be from food poisoning. So food poisoning usually shows up anywhere from 7 hours, and it could last 12, 24 hours, maybe 48 hours if it's really bad, generally speaking, for food poisoning. So waterborne illness is going to last possibly longer because you've ingested some parasites. That could go on for 4 or 5 weeks. So we don't want to ingest those things if we can help it. So you've got to be your own medic a lot of times and decide, well, if I'm nausea, is the other person nauseous as well? Did I eat something different than they eat? You got to do a little inspection, be a little bit of a detective and figure out what that was. So, but if it is, learn some ways that you can try to take care of that. Have some medications maybe that can offset some of that. But it's only going to get worse if you find yourself dehydrated. Your first thing you're going to be is thirsty. Well, most of us are dehydrated on a daily basis. We're probably about 20% dehydrated from where we should be. We get dry, we get cotton mouth, we get thirsty, but we're too busy to stop and drink something. You're going to need to drink roughly a gallon of water a day, and I'm going to give you the formula in here in a second. But if you're not drinking that much water every day, you're already causing yourself to be dehydrated. And once you're dehydrated, you're going to make poor choices. And poor choices, and you're going to get aggravated, you're going to be irritated, you have a short fuse, you're not going to be able to make clear decisions, and eventually you're going to become impaired. Here's the thing about being impaired. We all say, well, I know I'm not impaired. The thing is if you're impaired, you do not know that you're impaired. If you're truly impaired, you think you're okay. You've got to get over that thing of thinking I'm okay if I'm impaired, because you're going to keep going on and making bad decisions, and eventually you're going to become incapacitated. Is that what you want to do to your group, to your family, is to become incapacitated? I have had to be an expert witness in a Boy Scout lawsuit, and years ago, is because one of them died of heat stroke and did not drink enough water. And that is a situation that you do not want to find yourself in or have any of your children in. So going back to when I was in the military, The squad leader a good squad leader is always going to walk around and say, let me see you drink water. I not just ask you to drink water, let me see you drink water. And that's what you've got to do with the people with you, because they might not feel like drinking the water, because eventually they're just going to become incapacitated, and that's going to bring everybody else in the group down. It's going to be a big hardship for you and them. So you've got to stay on your game and do not get complacent with water. Complacency can go both ways here. It's going to go by not hydrating. You're not feel like drinking water. You're going to make those poor choices like we talked about, and that's where you're going to experience injury. In disasters, not just these big survival situations, hurricanes, tornadoes, when you're using chainsaws, when you're using heavy equipment, when you're hooking up things to tow vehicles, if you're not hydrated, you're not thinking clear enough to work with that equipment, and that's where a lot of injuries happen. And you're not able to self-diagnose because of the impairment. You also, when you're complacent, you kind of skimp on your sanitation. You're not thinking about the disease spread that you can get from not cleaning, your cross-contamination of dealing with meat on a counter. You're not washing the counter. You're not using the proper sanitary bleaches or cleaners. That's how you're going to spread disease. That kind of disease could lead to death. It could also lead to diarrhea, and diarrhea is a straight train to dehydration. The more you have diarrhea, the more fluids you're losing. And you've got to drink a lot of fluid to offset that diarrhea, or you're really going to find yourself in a very bad situation. Eventually, it's going to affect your kidneys. The toxins are going to build up in your kidneys, and then you're going to have kidney failure. And that's one of the things that happens, for example, in earthquakes, when people get trapped in buildings for several days. They don't have access to water. Their body starts shutting down because it can't excrete the toxins because there's no water going in. And a lot of those people die of kidney failure, believe it or not. So diarrhea is absolutely your enemy. It's going to lead to dehydration. Dehydration is going to lead to incapacitation. So what are the signs of dehydration? Well, like we talked about, we probably already started out dehydrated. So here's what we want to do. Make sure you're drinking enough clean water, but if you didn't, look at your urine color. The color of your urine is a very easy way to determine if you're drinking enough water. Your urine should be clear to just a little yellow. If your urine is a dark yellow, or worse, if it's brown, you're in bad shape. You've got to start hydrating immediately. Start looking at, and this is not just for you, this is also for your kids or whoever you're traveling with. Ask them, what color is your pee? If nothing else, it's a great conversation starter. Look at people in the eyes. Do they have dark eyes? Are they sunken? Do you have the dark spots under their eyes? Do their eyes look like they've kind of drawn in a little bit? Are they not peeing at all? Ask everybody, when's the last time you peed? You should technically be peeing about every 2 to 3 hours a day. Believe it or not, you should be peeing a little bit every 2 to 3 hours. If you have not peed since early in the morning, and now here it is, 8, 9 o'clock at night, then you're dehydrated. That's a problem. But as far as urine goes, if you're taking vitamin B12, that is going to make your urine kind of a neon yellow. So that's going to be a false positive for you. So if somebody is peeing yellow, ask them if they've taken any B12 vitamins today. That will definitely do that for them. So don't freak out over that. You're going to become fatigued. You're going to get tired. You're also going to show a loss of skin elasticity. In the fire department, when I deal with elderly people that have been shut in or they've been left, and I've found a lot of people that have been just left alone for days and have had no water, no food, and they're in a terrible situation. You know that they're dehydrated, but one of the things that we're looking for is on their tongue. Open your mouth. If they can't open their mouth because their tongue is swollen, that's a bad sign. If they stick out their tongue and the tongue has a trench down the middle of it, like a crack down the middle of it, that means that you're dehydrated. If your skin tints, if you go to pinch your skin and it stays up in a tint, that's an indication that you're dehydrated. A lot of elderly are facing that kind of problem on a regular basis. You might experience emotional instability. If people are normally grumpy, well, maybe that means they're doing fine. If people that are normally grumpy are no longer grumpy, that might be a bad situation. So that's something that you got to monitor in your people as well. And thirst. You're going to be thirsty If your body is thirsty, you're already dehydrated. You're supposed to drink to not allow yourself to be thirsty. So how much should I drink? Well, the actual measurement is body weight times 0.55 equals the ounces per day. So all that means is take your body weight and cut it in half. If you weigh 200 pounds, cut it down to 100, and that's the number of ounces that you should be drinking every day. 200 pounds, you should be drinking 100 ounces of water. 0.55, technically, you should be drinking 110, 120 ounces of water a day. It's a gallon. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you should be drinking a gallon of water a day, and that is very difficult for a lot of people. They don't want to do it because it's inconvenient, and it means you got to go to the bathroom too much, and it's really just an interruption to everything else you got going on. That leads to your dehydration. At a minimum, if you're in a survival situation and you're sitting under a tree in the shade and not doing anything, you still have to drink 2 quarts a day to keep your body processing the toxins through your kidneys. You've got to do 2 quarts a day as a minimum. Now, if you're running and gunning, or if it's sunny out and you're sweating, you're doing a lot of physical labor, now you've moved yourself up to about a 1 quart per hour. That's how much you got to get down. And once you start drinking up that much, you're going to start throwing off of your electrolytes. And you've got to find a way to get your electrolytes back in. At the fire department, we like to use the liquid IV pouches, put those in a little jug of water, drink that down, and that helps to correct your electrolyte imbalance. So that's very important. Increase your water consumption, the more labor, the more exercise that you're getting, but drink at least half your body weight in ounces per day. That's critical. So when you drink water, it is going to take you a little bit for it to reach, for your system to realize it. Your stomach, whether it's food or water, it's got about a 20-minute delay before it signals to your brain, okay, I'm feeling better now. So drink your water. In about 20 minutes is when you're going to start feeling better. Now, there are ways that you can rehydrate your partner if you need to orally. If they're conscious and able, and if they're conscious and alert, you can give them water orally. If they're not conscious, if you have somebody that is unconscious, never pour water down their throat. All you're going to do is end up pouring water, and they're going to asphyxiate right into their lungs, and they're going to drown them. Do not give people that are unconscious water. You've got to find other ways to do it. We use IVs in the fire EMT side of things, and you might not always have access to that kind of thing. So you've got to find another way to get that inside of them. There is rectally. Rectally, you can configure yourself for an enema. All you're going to need is a little jug of water, a piece of tubing that of the appropriate size, and you're going to have to push that thing about 5 or 6 inches up in somebody's backside. That is going to be the fastest way. If we have somebody who is severely dehydrated and in danger of going into some form of arrest, we can rectally rehydrate them. That's going to go a lot faster than the 20 minutes. Now, the reason that you want to go in 5 or 6 inches, you got to get through the rectal vault, and you got to get into the colon enough where your body will start to absorb that water. The key with that, the good news is you don't have to purify that water when you're sitting it in there. Your body already has a lot of E. coli and a lot of other bacteria in there. It's used to it. Down there, don't worry about it. Preferably don't send any chemicals up that way, because that's going to be a problem. But it is something that you can do if you absolutely had to. So how much water do I need to store is a question that we get a lot. And the answer is always one gallon a day per person. Fine. You're going to drink your gallon of water per day. But does that allow you to have the water that you need to also do the sanitation, the cooking, the cleaning, the toilet flushing? So that's kind of important to have too. So you're really looking at 4 or 5 gallons of water per day per person. That can add up very quickly. Now, this really starts to drive home the reason that you should find a nearby water source. If you're bugging in, if you're staying home, the power's down, the water's shut off, can you get water from outside and bring that in? You don't need to prepare water to pour it down a toilet to flush. For anybody that's not familiar with it, the way a toilet flushes, it just dumps water on top of whatever you put in there, and it pushes it down the drain. If you take a gallon or a 5-gallon bucket and pour it into the toilet, it will flush the toilet for you, just like as if you pulled the handle. So you don't need to have fancy water for that. Garbage water is fine. But when it comes to cooking, cleaning, and medical type of things, you really need to have water that is prepared for drinking. So nutrition versus dehydration. There are going to be some things that contribute to your dehydration: alcohol, caffeine, salty foods, and high protein foods are going to contribute to it. If you are dehydrated, severely dehydrated, and you don't see enough water on your horizon to keep you at a normal processing for your kidneys, do not eat food. You can go a lot longer without food than you can without the water. Your body is already dehydrated. If you haven't eaten anything, like let's say that you're malnourished for 5 days and all of a sudden you find food and you start scarfing it down, your body is going to go into an electrolyte imbalance so quick and so fiercely, it will kill you. So if somebody has not had food for a long period of time and you give them food, you're likely to kill them. Don't do that. You've got to get their body up, all their water back up before you do that and reintroduce the food slowly. And it's called refeeding syndrome. You can look that up. But if you don't have water, don't eat. And the reason behind that is not only the electrolyte imbalance, but it's also because your body needs the water to build and grow the enzymes that your body needs to break the food down into your digestive system to process it. If you're really low on water and you force your body to give up what little reserve it has to process proteins and things like that, you're going to dehydrate faster and you're going to find yourself on a downward spiral a lot quicker than you were. So keep in mind when to drink, when not to drink, when to eat, and when not to eat.
Hey, Charlie,
Purification.
I got a question real quick, and I don't mean if this is too in the weeds, we can talk about it later. However, I've heard people talk about the importance of sodium and the other electrolytes, and I've heard people say if you just drink water and you do not consume sodium or any electrolytes, then that will, it will give you an electrolyte imbalance, and at that point, every ounce of water, you're just depleting any kind of sodium that's in your system. What do you make of that? I mean, is that true? Is that a real risk in a survival situation?
Absolutely, it is. Have you ever seen, TikTok challenges kill a lot of people. And one of them was, can you chug a gallon of water? And when you do that, you're doing exactly like you just mentioned. You have flushed your electrolytes. You need the sodium, you need the calcium, you need the potassium, the magnesium. You need all those electrolytes to keep your body running, because that is what keeps your cells doing their processing. That's what keeps your brain operating. And if you drink too much fresh water without resupplying those electrolytes, yes, you can die from that. That's why I was saying sometimes drinking water without reintroducing electrolytes can be a very bad situation for you. If you go out in the woods, it's always a great idea to carry a pack or two of that liquid IV or something that's an electrolyte rehydration salt, not salts. You do not need salt, generally speaking, in most situations. Like the old days, they used to give you salt tablets in the Army. They don't do that anymore. All they found is that sodium is it's drying you up. But you do need the other electrolytes. So carry along a little packet of liquid IV or something like that in your pocket, in your backpack, in your car, glove box, whatever it is. And do not flush all of the electrolytes out of your body. You're absolutely correct. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you very much.
Great. When it comes to purification of the water, there's two things you've got to remember, and that's it, just two things. You need to filter it, and then you need to treat it. Filtration is removing the contaminants. It's removing the silt, the dirt, it's removing the grass, it's removing the whatever is floating in the water, the turbidity, which is the silt that's in the water. We may talk about turbidity in a couple minutes, but it also is what removes the chemicals, the heavy metals, the arsenics, the leads, the mercuries, and even radiologicals. If you're worried about fallout from a nuclear detonation of some sort, you need to have filtration that will do that, that will remove that. That's up to you, whatever you're preparing for. So remove the contaminants. Once you've removed the contaminants, you have not necessarily removed the protozoa, the pathogens, the viruses, and things like that by filtering. Maybe not. That's where treating comes in. Now, treating is done in a number of different ways. You just got to pick whatever is good for your situation. Treating could be boiling, it could be pasteurizing, which we're going to talk about, and it could be bleaching. That's what treating is. You're doing something to kill the little buggy, wiggly things that are floating around in your water, the parasites that are going to make you sick. So if you're not sure about what to do with your water, what condition it's in, if it has chemicals, if it has viruses or whatever it is, filter and treat it. That will cover your bases. And filter first. The priorities of what type of water do I need? We touched on it a little bit before. The highest quality of water is going to be drinking, oral hygiene, first aid, things of that nature. Also cleaning surfaces when you're dealing with raw food and stuff. Middle quality water that you might just filter all the gook out of with a light filter. It could be cooking irrigation, that falls somewhere in between. The reason I say irrigation might need to be prepared is a lot of people use rain barrels to catch rainwater off of their shingle roof. And then they use that water to go straight into their garden. And I've met a lot of people that made the mistake of running that water straight into their garden without filtering it out or without letting the first 10 minutes of the storm run off. Because the shingles are made with a fungicide, herbicides built into them to prevent that ugly mildewy blackness that grows on your shingles that makes your shingles look older. That's the way they're built from the factory to make them last longer and hold their appearance longer. But that stuff washes off into your rain barrel and goes straight in the garden. If you're collecting rain barrels, let the first 10 minutes of your water go off onto the ground and then put the rest of that water into your barrel, because that's washed off most of the raccoon, the bird poop, all of the stuff that might be dropped up on top of your house, the pollen this time of year is coming. All of that stuff, you want to let that out before you drop it into your garden. The lowest quality, like I said, is going to be laundry or flushing. If you're doing laundry, you're running soap anyway, it doesn't matter. Just filter some of the mud out of it if you can. So 3 easy steps to remember if when you're thirsty. Find the best water that you can. Pre-filter the silts and floaties, which I'm going to show you a picture of in a second, and then choose the appropriate method of purification. I have found 29 of them. Actually, there's 30. I found another one today. There's 30 different ways to prepare water. So it's not just a couple of things. So we're going to talk about a couple of those. There's going to be the iodine, the old school. If you've ever been out, I've been out with Dave Canterbury from his school in the swamps, and we did iodine. If you're going to do iodine, just make sure that you are not allergic to iodine, as some people might be. If you're allergic to shellfish, don't use iodine. You can get iodine down at the drugstore, and you can do 5 to 10 drops, throw it in your canteen, 32 ounces. And it's important that once you do that and you shake it up, that you open up the cap on your bottle and shake it up so some water comes out, because you don't want the water on the outside of the threads of your bottle to contaminate the inside that when you put your lips on it. So look into that a little bit more, but that will work. But you got to wait 30 minutes to do that, depending on your water quality. Liquid bleach. Here's the thing about liquid bleach. People will buy a case of Clorox, they'll throw it in the garage, and they'll hang on to it for eternity. Liquid bleach has an effective shelf life, and that shelf life is 6 months. After 6 months, the sodium hypochlorite or calcium hypochlorite, depending on what bleach that you end up with, is going to, it's a VOC, it's going to evaporate off, it's going to render itself ineffective, and you're going to get bleachy smelling water, essentially. You can't drink it, you can't even make it drinkable, but it's not going to prepare the water and be the sanitary cleaning device that you want it to be for all the other uses. So if you don't use that bleach in 6 months, try to rotate it into your laundry. It's not very expensive. You might be able to get rid of it, but then you're dealing with, another hazmat issue. So rotate bleach through your laundry as much as possible, and don't think that you're going to be able to use it a year from now. It will not work. It's also very corrosive, and it's a health hazard. That stuff, you'll get you open that up in a tight area, you're going to inhale that, and you're going to get chlorine burns down your esophagus. That's a bad situation. But if you're going to use it for water, if you've got clear water, you can use 8 drops per gallon, and that should kill whatever's in there. Now, it's not going to take out chemicals, but it will treat the water. And if it's cloudy water, that turbidity, if you shake it up and you see all this stuff floating around, 16 drops per gallon will do it, because it's got to also treat that silt. So water purification tablets. The pros, they're easy to carry. They're a good backup plan for filtration, but they're going to take 30 minutes to 4 hours to be effective. That's not always convenient, and it tastes terrible. And they have a shorter shelf life. You'll put it in your backpack and you'll turn around, and next thing you know, they've already expired, and they've expired because of the same reason bleach does. Their efficacy is no longer any good because it's just depleted. So different brands require different ways of using them. Follow the directions that you get on the ones that you've purchased. Now, boiling water is very effective in the wild. You're going to need a single wall container. Now listen, don't use your fancy Stanley cup. Those that are, you see all the craze coming out, don't use Stanley cups or any water bottle that is double wall steel on it, because you'll put it in the fire and that thing is going to rupture. It's not going to get into the heat inside where you want it, and you're going to ruin your bottle. So a single wall container, an old metal cup, a metal can, a metal hiking bottle, something like that with a wide mouth is the way to go. And then you're going to put the water, you're going to set the water inside of that, and you're going to set it next to, right in the middle of your fire. It will be fine and it will boil. Be sure that your cup has some sort of a handle, or you've got some sort of tongs or a glove that you're going to be able to pull that out of the fire, because it is going to be scalding hot. So you got to be careful with that. Remember, boiling won't remove the chemicals. And when you drink boiled water, it's going to taste really flat. It's going to be really off-putting. All you got to do is shake it up and re-oxygenate it, or stir it vigorously if it's in an open cup, and that'll introduce the oxygen back to it, and then it'll be more palatable. Now, here's what I was talking about pre-filtering and boiling. All you need to pre-filter is a bandana, a t-shirt, a cloth of any sort that's got a tight mesh. You see the picture of the bandana. If you look close, this is my picture. This is something I did out when I was in the Everglades doing an advanced survival course. That is the silt. That's the turbidity that gets inside of your water. You don't want to drink it anyway. It just tastes bad. But you're also going to save your filters. Anytime that you're going to put dirty water into a filter, you're going to clog it up. Take your bottle and put a bandana over it, and let all of the water go through the bandana, or pour it through the bandana, catch that silt, that turbidity, and then now you've got clearer water to deal with. That's going to help you not to drink it, and it's also going to save your filter. But another more important thing too, or equally important, is that if you're using some sort of a solar disinfectant, which we're going to talk about, UV or whatever it's going to be, you need to get the silt out of there, because the bacteria will hide in the shadows of those tiny silt molecules, those little things in there. It actually does happen, and it makes it harder for your water to be purified. Carry a bandana when you go somewhere. Now, here's another method called pasteurization. You've heard the word before, but all it means is bringing water to a temperature that is going to kill the bacteria so that you can make it drinkable. The only reason that we say to boil water is because we're going to find ourselves out in some area that we don't have a meat thermometer or a thermometer that goes high enough to reach 149 degrees. And that is going to be your pasteurization temperature. You can boil your water to 149 and sit it for 6 minutes, and you're good. You can take it to 161 degrees, and you only need 16 seconds. You do not have to take your water to boiling to make sure that it is purified. And at 161 degrees, you will be successful in killing the cryptosporidium cysts. So they're a little bit harder to kill than some of the other stuff. So have a great thermometer. A lot of these other little cheapy meat thermometers will not hold up. You need a thermometer that is made for hot water. Or you can use a water pasteurization indicator. You can find them online. It's called a WAPI, and it has a special wax in there, and it sets in the water, and when the water reaches the temperature, that wax is designed for 149 degrees to melt to the bottom, and you're like, that's basically a visual indicator. Ding, your water is prepared. So there you go if you're interested in getting a WAPI. Now, SODIS is also something that is used in a third world country. I'd like to plan my water purification methods based on what is done in third world countries, because if we have that kind of situation, we're probably going to be working under the same conditions. Why not use what is successful somewhere else? So you can fill up these little plastic bottles, maximum of 4 inch in diameter, with clear water, as clear as possible. If you can't filter out the water, pour it in a bucket, let it sit for a while, and that silt will separate to the bottom, and then you can scoop out the clear water above. put the lid on those bottles, lay them on some corrugated sheet metal or something really hot, and let the sun sit on it for 6 hours or 2 days of cloudy weather, and it will get incredibly hot. It's like a pressure cooker in there. The water will only need to be 86 degrees inside the bottle, but that is pressure cooker temperature actually inside the bottle that will kill all the little bugs inside of it. Also shake it up for flavor. But once you open that bottle, you have no residual protection, and bacteria can regrow in that water, come back to effectiveness overnight if you're not careful. So drink the water, use it up, fill it, put it back out on the sheet metal, and use a whole bunch of those bottles, and you'll have an ongoing water supply. Distillation, you can solar distill or you can distill by fire. You can do a solar pit. We've seen everybody do that and put a poncho with a rock in the middle, and you can do one of those. What is it going to remove? It's going to take out salt water. It's going to take out salt. It's going to take out the radiologicals, chemicals, except for things like we talked about radiator fluid. But it's also distilled water removes the minerals. If you're worried about an electrolyte imbalance and you're drinking distilled water, you're speeding up that electrolyte imbalance. You've got to have the minerals in there, so only use distilled water as little as possible. You can use it for cooking and stuff, but you need regular water for drinking. Now, travel filtration, we talked about these little hiking bottles like the Iodine filter. If you'll notice, you got to stop, you got to set it up, put the hoses on it, you got to pump the water and put it into the bottle. It's a thing. Life straws, I'm not a big fan. It's a great backup thing to have. I prefer not to lay down in the water to drink it if I can help it. So I have other solutions. Honestly, I prefer the Berkey bottles. They have saved me and other people I know time and again. I met a lady in an REI store who was confused with her daughter trying to figure out all these different water bottles and water filters. And I said, can I help you pick one? What are you looking to do? She said, well, my daughter's and a bunch of people are going down on a church mission to Venezuela. So I said, well, I'm not confident in these that they have on the shelf. Can I send you a Berkey Sport bottle? And she said, sure. So I sent her one in the mail. She sent it to Venezuela with her little girl. And there was 17 people on the church mission. 17 people got sick. The only people that did not get sick were the two girls that shared the Berkey bottle. All of the other filters failed all of those other people. And there was all different brands of filters down there. That to me, they sent me a postcard thanking me up and down for not getting waterborne illness. So I have perfect confidence in this. I've used it in the swamps, canals. I've used it in muddy ditch water. It's worked for me time and again. And the bigger Berkey Light bottles, these bigger filters, amazing. They'll take out the radiologicals as well. And they have extra filters that you can use for arsenic, chromium, heavy metals, mercury, and all that other stuff that will also go on to the bottom of those existing filters. So I believe in those. There's also the electrolytic chlorine generator that I just did some research into. I actually found out that I do have one of those that I've had for years. I haven't really used it, but all it does is it uses a little bit of table salt. It's got a battery inside of it that will last for years. You put a little bit of salt in there, you put in a little brine solution, and you pour it where that little blue and black cap is, and you pick the amount of water that you want to treat, and in seconds, it creates a brine solution fitted for the amount of water that you want to treat. Then you just pour that in there, and you are good to go. 30 minutes for regular water. If it's really bad water, you may need to wait for 4 hours. There's two versions of it. The blue one is a more common hiking version. The black one does a little bit more. It's a little bit more hardy. It's actually made to military specifications. And so that is a great solution. I called and spoke to the inventor of this a couple of days ago, and he explained the whole process to me. I like it. I wish I would have known the process of that before when I'd originally got mine. I probably would have used it more often. But it's a really nice compact backup thing. You will have free water for the rest of the years that thing works. And it just recharges just like a cell phone. If you go to their website, you can look them up. It's aquaresearch.com. They send those things to Haiti, to Africa, and all these different places, and they show them how to have free drinking water from then on out. So it sounds like a pretty great solution.
Hey, Charlie, just one point here. Before everyone goes on Amazon and wherever else to buy all this stuff, because I was just looking on Amazon a short while ago, looking at how much stuff costs. Charlie, you said one thing we're trying to do is negotiate bulk discounts for early warning network members. And so was it the H2O Go or the global that we may be able to get
it was it was the H2Go Global, the Prime. They're on back order, but he will still honor the bulk discount for our people. If we put a bulk, he says if we can get more than 10 in a purchase, he'll take them down a lot cheaper for us and save a bunch of money.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're interested, reach out to us, and we can get you that. I just didn't want to give away his bulk rate, on
Sure.
on on live stream to everybody in the world, because I made an arrangement with him. So
Sure.
but yes, it's considerably cheaper.
Yeah. So A, thanks for doing that for us. And B, we're going to continue to try negotiate bulk rates or group discounts on all this stuff as well. Just kind of another benefit and side point here. Sorry to interrupt.
Not at all. No, that's a good point. And I think it's a great solution, and we do need to bring solutions to all the subscribers. That's part of the information and the solutions. Now, if you're looking at filters and you're not sure which one you want to get, I would say demand the lab test results. This is the actual lab test results that Berkey brought me. They didn't have results when they came to me to offer me to use. I used to sell Berkey stuff. I don't sell equipment anymore, but I used to, and I would not entertain their product until they brought me lab results. And it took a few months. They sent it out, and this is the lab results, and I was extremely impressed. And from then on, I'm 100% supporter of Berkey supplies. So if somebody tells you, hey, use this filter, tell them, show me the lab test, what it takes out. We talked about harvesting rainwater. Can you drink it? Sure, you absolutely can. Rain in general that falls from the sky is drinkable straight up until it touches something contaminated. So if you have a clean tarp and rainwater falls on that clean tarp, you can drink the water straight off the tarp without having to do any treating, any filtering or treating. Now, the caveat to that is if your tarp is dirty, or if it's coming off a roof like we talked about, or it contacts anything else, then it needs to be treated and filtered. So now the other caveat with that is if you're in a nuclear fallout situation and rain is going through a fallout cloud, yep, you're going to have to filter that. Or if you're in downstream of some serious pollutant from a chemical plant and your rainwater is going through that, you probably want to take care of that water too. So rain barrels, tarps set up to funnel water into buckets or pits. You can dig pits and line those with tarps and let all your rainwater run into that, and you can have some field expedient storage just right there. Rain harvesting, here's a picture of what I was just talking about. Build a pit, let the rainwater fall into it, make big tarps into big funnels to have more surface area to catch more water. DIY in the open, there's some very elaborate rain barrel systems. You can look those up if that's something that you're interested in doing. And if you want to be a little bit more hidden about a little bit more tactical, you can do things like this that are hidden cisterns. There's big bladders that you can put in locations underneath the house, and nobody would ever know that you're storing, a lot of water down there. Purification methods called sodium hypochlorite. That is the active ingredient in bleach. And this version that I am talking about is pool shock, straight pool shock. If you go to a pool store, say I would like a packet of pool shock, and read the ingredients on it. If it only says sodium hypochlorite, you're good. If it has clarifiers and all kinds of other things in it, you don't want that. You don't want your water tasting like a hot tub. So don't do that. These things are about the size of a burrito. They are amazing. They are bartering gold. One burrito-sized packet of pool shock treats 11,000 gallons of water. So you can imagine how beneficial that is. It's a lot easier to use the barrel size or bigger storage applications to treat that water with that size than it is about a liter of water because you're trying to parse that out. That's be very difficult to do to not over-treat. Measure it very carefully, and key with the powder, pour the powder in the water you want to treat. Never pour the water into the powder. If you pour the water into the powder, you're going to basically create a phosgene gas and you're going to probably die. I'm just exaggerating only a little bit because it's going to create a gas that is going to burn your esophagus, and especially if you're in an enclosed environment. Don't do that. Water storage ideas: bottles, jugs, barrels, farm tanks, cisterns. Cisterns are something that if you look at any of the tropical islands, you'll see those big barrels that are on stands up alongside the house. That's where they store their rainwater. They pump water into it, and then they have running water because there is no city water piping in those areas. So you can do something like that. Swimming pools, you can prepare the water out of a swimming pool. If it's a chlorinated pool, wait till the pool turns green, and then you'll know that the sodium hypochlorite, the bleach, has now depleted and evaporated, and the algae is taking over. That's why you need the pool shock. So now you see how that works. Once the pool starts turning green, filter and treat it, and you can then drink the water, and because you're going to filter out the clarifiers and all the stuff that was in there. Saltwater pools, the salt water has a saline content that is about equal to tears out of your eyes. That's a normal saline, but you still don't want to drink it because the more salt that you drink, the more saline sodium that you put into your system, the harder it is on your kidneys. You need to filter that out if possible. If you got a filter that will do that. Wait till it turns green, and then a lot of that will settle to the bottom, and you might have some fresh rainwater on the top you might be able to scoop off. Ponds and fountains, we talked about wild water and things like that. Types of filters, do some research. Charcoal straws like the Life Straw, activated charcoal you can make with a hardwood, hard oaks, hard hickory. You can cook that down into a charcoal and crunch that up, and you can make a charcoal sand gravel type of filter. But I will warn you that there's no specs, there's no specifications on how to build a layered filter that way. A lot of people on YouTube will tell you, sure, put it in a stocking, layer some grass and some charcoal and some sand, and you're good to go. Until you pour the water in the top of the stocking, it goes around the sand and falls right into your cup, and you've got bad water anyway. You've got to put that into buckets, and you got to pack it down as tightly as possible, put as much sand as possible in there, and you might reduce your bio load of bacteria somewhat, but not completely. Especially filters, we talked about Berkey filters with arsenic and fluoride. And reverse osmosis membranes will take out a lot of stuff, but the problem is by the time you put a 5-stage RO system in, you need a ridiculous amount of electricity and pressure to push the water through those filter elements. So it's not always a great solution if you don't have enough power to pump water through an RO system. So keep that in mind. Where else do we find water? You can do, if you're at the beach, you can go behind the sand dunes and dig down a little bit until you find water. The top water will probably be rainwater that's sitting on top of the salt water. You can drink that. You can put rags around your ankles and walk through wet grass in the morning, and you can collect water that way. And you can, transpiration is where you put a big plastic bag over a branch of a bush or a tree and let the sunlight force all the water out of that thing. It'll kill it, but you'll have some water in your bag that you can drink. I won't get into the salty fish flesh. That's a whole nother thing when you're stranded at sea about getting the water out of the lymphatic system of a fish. Trees and ants, if you see ants crawling up a tree, that usually means that they're going into a little puddle of water somewhere in there. And yes, you can drink your urine. I don't recommend it because by the time that you're ready to drink your urine, if you're that thirsty, your urine is probably already depleted of enough water. What you can do is pour your urine, collect that, and put it into your distilling pot, whether it's with fire or solar, and then you can pull the water out of it that way. So that's a whole nother process. Your water kit, you should have a water kit. Make a stainless steel container, single wall like we talked about, some way to make a fire, cloth and bandana. Get some water purification tablets that are small and easy to carry. Keep an eye on the expiration dates. I recommend carrying a Berkey bottle rather than the Sawyers or the Katadyn filters or MSR or any of those, because I can open up the filter on my Berkey bottle, scoop the water out of the water while I'm walking, put the filter back down, and drink it immediately. I don't have to stop and mess with tubes. I don't have to mess with pumps and all the other stuff that comes with those other hiking filters. I can scoop and move, and I find that to be very beneficial. And you can make some, you can purchase some activated charcoal if you want, and you can carry that. Sometimes you can also use that a little bit if you got an upset stomach, but that's a whole nother thing. Summing it all up, choose your water wisely. Pre-filter with a bandana or t-shirt or some cloth, and filter and then treat if you're not sure about your water. Boiling for a minute will definitely kill the germs, but they won't remove the chemicals. And that is my short version of a water purification class. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, Charlie, I knew you were good. That's why I asked you to come on board. but this was real good. And I think you may be the best after seeing all this. And a lot of people in the chat were saying that as well. Charlie, I think you're probably the Mike Shelby of preparedness and survival, frankly.
Wow.
All
That is an honor. I am flattered. I bow and I stand in the shadow of your awesomeness, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you for all this. I'm going to have to watch this like 2 or 3 times to just take notes and actually consume all this stuff. All right. So we do have some questions here. So we'll just take these in order here.